Welcome back. Even though I don't do any metalworking, having a small anvil is something I find comes in quite handy now and again. I've had this piece of railroad track for many years now, and I've just set it on top of the bench and used the curved top surface. But maybe it's time to make a frame for it, make it a bit more practical, and give me access to the base of the track for larger pieces. So why does a woodworker need a small anvil? Well, I tend to find I use it for straightening the tang of a chisel, or I might use it for peening over a brass pin through, I don't know, a knife handle, say. It comes in quite handy, but it's not used all that often. So I don't want to spend a lot of time making something extravagant. I just want something handy, practical, and fairly easy to make. So if you've been on YouTube or Pinterest and looked at small anvils, you've probably seen people use railroad tracks as an anvil before, and some of them are extremely complicated. They reshape the piece of metal to provide different surfaces and shapes, or they use a large tree trunk and carve out a slot for the anvil, the railroad track to sit in. These are all great, but far too complicated for what I need. So I'm going to try and make something a bit more straightforward, a bit more accessible, and something that you might want to try too if you've got a small space. So here you can see that the track I have is actually quite rusty at this stage, and in poor condition because it's just sat outside unused for quite a while. What I'm going to do is place it on a piece of paper and just trace around it. That'll give me the shape of the track, and something I can use as a template. And at this stage I'm going to turn the anvil around and place it carefully back over the tracing in the opposite direction. In this way I should be able to make a shape that I can then cut into a piece of wood that will allow me to hold the anvil, the railroad track, in either direction. And at this stage I'm just going to cut the tracing in half because I only need half of this as a template, and I'm just trying to work out what amount of railroad track I want protruding out of the wood. And then just simply trim out the template. Here I'm just going to assess the size of the template and make sure that it is going to work, and that if I cut hold to the size of this template, the track will fit into it. And here I'm putting the template on a piece of 2x4. And yes, I'm still using inches even though I'm in the UK. It just seems natural when I've got a piece of timber like this. You'll see me here just looking and thinking. I do that quite a lot because I'm not using plans. So I often just stare at the wood and till the idea of what I'm doing next comes to me. I've split the board into 4 pieces, and in each piece I'm going to trace around the template in order to cut it out on the bandsaw. But you don't have a bandsaw, that's fine. Jigsaw would work. You could drill it on a pillar drill and then trim it out. You could use a turning saw on it. You could do this in many different ways. Just use the tools that you've got to hand. And I don't really need to tell you that I'm just going to cut this piece into sections, but it's a YouTube video, so you have to explain everything you do. And here you can see that I'm taking time to establish a straight line and a 90-degree cut. And it only occurs to me later that there's no real need for that because I am going to trim the ends later on. So just cut it. It doesn't need to be accurate. And I've cut it into 4 sections just because that's what fitted on the piece of wood. Again, no plans, not working with plans, just doing what I've got with the materials I've got. This time it worked out really well. The 4 pieces, when added together, perfectly matched the anvil, and that was just coincidence. The first piece I cut out on the bandsaw was probably slightly too large. It would work fine, but it gave a little bit too movement for my liking. So on 2 of these pieces, I'm going to reduce the width slightly just to give a slightly closer fit to the anvil. And I'll place them on the front and back of the timber, which should help reduce any slop in the movement. So again, here you can see me just thinking things through, just taking my time, trying, testing, and just making sure that if I continue and glue everything up, it's going to work the way I thought it would. And this glue's from a previous project. I'm just using the last of it up. No point in wasting it, but I am going to get some more out of the shed in a second. And this is a tip I've not seen anybody out there use, although I've no doubt somebody's tried it. I'm just using an artist paint palette knife to spread the glue. I find this works a lot better than some of the other things you can use, a brush or your finger, for example. And now you can see me aligning the two pieces. I'm going to use the railroad track just to make sure that they are aligned correctly and that the pieces will allow the track to move in and out. You could use salt. I've seen that on YouTube videos, but I don't think it's really necessary. I'll probably just put some screws in there just to put some clamping force on whilst the glue's setting. So again, you can see me here thinking things through. I'm testing, retesting, just trying to make sure it's working the way I want it to work. You don't see this in videos. Usually they're edited down so that you just see a kind of perfect build scenario. Let me know if you think keeping things like this in is useful, because again, without using plans, I stop and consider what I'm doing from time to time. The four pieces of timber are now all glued up. The screws have come out, the glue's dried, and I can test the fit on the track. And it's worked out surprisingly well. It fits really well between the four pieces. There's a bit of resistance getting it in and out, but once I trim up or file or rasp or just make a few modifications, it should slide in and out quite comfortably. And this is a step I wasn't really looking forward to. I'm going to try and take some of the rust off. Yeah, it looked a bit daft pressing my finger onto the end of that chisel. But this is a blunt chisel and there is no edge on it, and I'm using it to scrape the rust, the thick flaky rust off the top of the anvil. Once the loose rust has come off, I'm going to use a wire wheel just to take as much rust off as I can. And I've already got a dust mask on, but here I'm putting hearing protection on as well. I do try and take care when I'm working to have the right PPE. That's a choice everyone needs to make for themselves, but I think it's a good idea. Make sure you're doing things safely when you're in the workshop. And here with a file, I'm not flattening the anvil. All I'm doing at this stage is taking out any of the lumps and bumps and defects that impact on a flat surface. It is slightly pitted, and it would take a lot of time to flatten it completely. And at this stage, I'm not using it often enough for me to put that much effort in, but perhaps in the future I will do. I haven't shown it, but I've trimmed the ends so that they're even, because I didn't make every piece identical. So it's now even at the edges. It's been sanded and just a slight chamfer on the edges, and I've painted it. No need for painting, but it just finishes the project off nicely. So after the rust removal, I used some boiled linseed oil to coat the rail track, and I used a small torch just to heat up that oil, allow it to set slightly onto the metal. This isn't really bluing the metal, but it just gives a little bit of protection to try and reduce the rust coming back. And you can see, as we look at this in a bit more of a close-up shot, there is still pitting in there. For what I need, that isn't really a problem, but if you're doing metalworking, you definitely want to smooth this out more. So here's the final project. Looks okay. It's a lot more straightforward, a lot simpler build than a lot of the ones I've seen on YouTube or Pinterest or the like. It doesn't require complicated chiseling. It doesn't require lots of laminations. It's just a fairly straightforward way of doing it. Hopefully it'll be of use to you. And here we can see just swapping round, changing the direction of the anvil, fairly straightforward, fairly simple, and gives you a large flat surface to work on. I hope this project can be of use to you. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this project, and I hope you come back and watch something else in the future.